Okay, let's talk about money, but not in that boring spreadsheet kind of way. No, we're going to talk about freedom and power and a trap that you might not even know you're stuck in. And believe it or not, our guide for this whole journey is going to be a very, very stressed out raccoon.
I mean, that sounds like a nightmare, right? It's just one of those days where everything that possibly can go wrong does. But what if I told you this isn't just some made up bad luck story? For a lot of people, that nightmare scenario is way closer to reality than you think. A recent study actually found that almost half the population, we're talking 45% of people, could not handle an unexpected $1,000 expense. This is way more than a story. It's a real-life statistic that's trapping millions in this cycle of just trying to stay afloat. To really get this, let's meet Scruffy the Raccoon. Now, Scruffy's a hard worker, but last Tuesday, the wheel on his foraging cart just completely broke. A classic emergency. But here's Scruffy's biggest mistake. He thinks that broken wheel is his only problem. It's not. The real problem, the one that's actually holding him back, runs much, much deeper.
Okay, so what is really going on with Scruffy? Well, he's basically experiencing this psychological phenomenon that researchers have a name for. He's living inside something they call the tunnel. Now, the tunnel isn't about being lazy or being bad with money, not at all. It's actually a powerful biological response. See, when you're constantly stressed about making ends meet, your brain dedicates pretty much all of its bandwidth, all of its processing power, to short-term survival. There's just no cognitive energy left over for anything else.
And this is the result. When you're in that tunnel, your focus just shrinks. All you can think about are this month's bills, not that promotion at work. You're worried about affording groceries today, not scheduling a health checkup for 6 months from now. You completely miss the big picture because all the immediate problems are just screaming for your attention.
So this tunnel vision, it leads directly to what you could call the toxic tree trap. Scruffy, well, he hates his job, but finding a new one could take months and he has absolutely zero savings. So he can't afford to leave. It's like he's wearing these invisible chains, forced to accept low pay and a bad environment because the fear of having no income at all is so much worse than the misery of his current job. So here's the wild part, the big paradox. Not having money actually costs you more money. Yeah, you heard that right. It's this incredibly expensive cycle of just barely getting by.
Economists actually have a name for this. They call it the poverty premium. And you can think of it like a hidden tax on being financially fragile. Because you don't have that cash cushion, you're forced to make these inefficient choices that always end up costing you more in the long run.
Let's look at a few examples, right? You buy single apples because you can't afford the big discounted crate. Or you pay your insurance bill every single month, totally missing out on that 15% discount you'd get for paying annually. You wait for your cart's axle to literally snap instead of fixing a little squeak months earlier for, a fraction of the cost. You're constantly bleeding money simply because you don't have enough to be strategic.
But here's the good news. This is not a life sentence. One day, Scruffy just decides he's had enough. He is ready to build his escape plan.
And his plan is beautifully simple, but it is so powerful. Step 1, save a starter emergency fund. We're talking $1,000, maybe $2,000. This is like financial first aid. It stops the bleeding from all those little emergencies. Step 2, build that up to 3 months of living expenses. This is your buffer. Now a job loss is stressful, for sure, but it's not catastrophic. Then step 3, aim for 6 months. This right here is where you find genuine security, and it's where the real magic starts to happen. So how does he actually pull this off? Well, he doesn't rely on willpower. I mean, let's be honest, that's a recipe for failure. He uses a tool that is so much more powerful, automation. The absolute most effective strategy is to take your own memory, your own emotions, completely out of the equation. So here's the playbook. First, he opens a separate high-yield savings account. We'll call it his high-yield hollow. Then, and this is key, he sets up automatic transfers from his checking account for every single payday. Critically, he makes this money just a little bit inconvenient to get to. No debit card attached. That little bit of friction prevents him from dipping into it for non-emergencies, like, say, a really cool collection of shiny pebbles.
So Scruffy sticks to the plan. He automates his savings, and slowly but surely, that foundation gets bigger and bigger. And as it grows, something absolutely incredible starts to happen. The second Scruffy hits that 6-month savings goal, everything changes. And it's not just about the money in the bank. It's like a switch just flips in his brain. The tunnel disappears, and his whole world just opens up.
Let's just look at this transformation. Before, his whole mindset was defensive and just fearful. Now, it's strategic and confident. He's not begging for raises anymore. He's negotiating from a position of strength because he knows he can walk away if he has to. Financial ruin isn't hiding behind every little mystique anymore. So he's finally free to take smart risks and maybe even propose some bold new ideas.
What it all comes down to is this. A cash cushion buys you the single most valuable asset in the entire world: options. It's the power to say no to a job you hate and the freedom to say yes when a great opportunity suddenly pops up. He can actually pounce on a good thing while everyone else is stuck on the sidelines.
In the end, Scruffy realized his savings weren't just about surviving emergencies. They were about giving himself permission. Permission to build the life he actually wanted, not just the one he was kind of forced to accept. So the real question for you is, once you build your cushion, what will you finally give yourself permission to do?